Lafayette, ETM Hotel, Rennie Sean, welcome in peace. My name is Sean. Just want to thank everybody for tuning into the Mossi Warrior Clan YouTube channel. We live, man. You know, I got Brother Kofi on the panel with me. He driving, so he might not have a whole lot to say. But if he got something to say, Kofi, man, and you listening, you know what I'm saying, you can kind of, so you can go ahead and unmute the mic.
Yeah, I was gonna say ETM Hotel, Dua Dua U, Dua Aku, Dua Nature, Fatmu Lafayette, which means bring forth peace, Fatmu Iwa Pele, which means bring forth good character. Uh, Welcome back to the show, to the Mossi Warrior Clan channel. We appreciate y'all for tuning in. Majuba Iba E, Majuba uh, Iba E Gungun, Majuba Iba E Lakba. Always want to give honor and praises to the ancestors and also give honor and praises to the elders. Uh, that's all I got, man. Y'all take your pen and pads out, take notes, and please share and like the show and tell a friend and tell a friend and tell a friend and tell a friend about the show.
Okay, cool. Appreciate that, Kofi. So I'm gonna go ahead and get it in. Hopefully I sound all right. Peace to the brothers and sisters in the chat coming in. People that will go back and visit the presentation, who may go back and visit the presentation. I appreciate it. This is going to be a historical and educational piece, and we're going to talk about. We're going to have a conversation about the history of the Tallensi people and the West African god Tung-Naba. So I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. And without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And by the time we get done, Kofi will be home. Now I don't know if it's gonna be that long, but let's rock and roll, my people. Hey man, that is the music directly from the people, man. That is the Tallensi music that you hear right there. You hear the sister in the ground hollering at a high pitched voice.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Let's get it. So here's an outline of what we're actually going to discuss today. Um, it is vital if you are on your cell phone to screenshot some of the stuff that we're actually going to talk about today. Um, if it let me know if it looks a little blurry on your screen. If not, you might want to adjust your settings, your YouTube settings, so you can kind of clear it up, the quality per se. Um, we'll go over my hypothesis. We'll look at some terms used during the presentation. We'll get into who the Tallensi are and who is Tung-Nab, the history of Tung-Nab and its people, the traditions, conclusion, of course, the sources in the outro. All right. My hypothesis. Many years ago, a people we know today as the Talensi people must have migrated to a place in Ghana to escape slave raiding and protect themselves from a people looking to capture and sell them. In the midst of their migration, they found shelter in a place that would hide them from those they couldn't conquer. And it was here where they would create their own identity, culture, and traditional significance as a people in West Africa. So here are some terms that will commonly be used throughout this presentation. If you are on a cell phone or a laptop or something like that, or you want to screenshot this, you can. I don't want to hold anyone up. So you can pause the video where we are. Um, don't try to write these down. It's probably easier to screenshot because we will refer back to some of these words. So the next 4 slides are going to be just like this. But one of the keywords I will say that you will see a lot is Bo'ar and Bo'er, Ba'er, I'm sorry, which is the ancestor shrine, which is Ba'er, and the Bo'ar, which is the ancestor shrine that is devoted to the founder of a lineage clan. Okay. Here are some more that are commonly used. Um, most of these are titles, whether it's the chief, if it's a keeper of an office, if it's a herbalist or so forth. Some shrine names, as you can see, Tongban is an earth shrine. Tung-Naba, that's you'll see that is a custodian of the earth or the earth priest. You may see Na or Naba, which is circular office holder or chief. Mung, which is red fez. It's the symbol of chiefly office. Many Moors will assume that these people that wear these red fezzes in West Africa are either of Moorish uh, traditions or whatnot, but a lot of that just basically means a chiefly office among its people. So no, not all fezzes that you see are affiliated with Moorish people. Um, Tongrana is a commonly one you may see. Just trying to look down the list to see some of these will jump off. You will see Ba'i, which is at the bottom of your screen, which is witchcraft. There's a reason for that being there. That this is someone's translation, what would be considered witchcraft. And we will speak a little bit about that. You may have seen some posts on Facebook and our like page in regarding uh, the Talensi people and their anti-witchcraft sentiments. Some more commonly used terms throughout this presentation. Adura medicine, Adura bone, which is bad medicine or poison. You may see that. Odikro, village head. Um, Obayefo, which is witch. So you have the Baye, which is witchcraft, and then the Obayafo, which is witch. And I'm not pronouncing them correctly, but you know. And then Baye Boro, maleficent witchcraft. So who are the Tallensi people? Tallensi, also spelled Tallensi, are people of northern Ghana who speak a language of the Gur branch of the Niger-Congo language family. They grow millet and sorghum as staples and raise cattle, sheep, and goats on a small scale. Their normal domestic unit is the polygamous joint family of a man and his sons, and sometimes grandsons with their wives and unmarried daughters. Married daughters live with their husbands and other communities commonly nearby. This is an image of an elder and the kids in the community. As you can see behind the elder, inside of what would be his home, uh, you see pictures. So kind of like you are your home right now, you have pictures in your home in your living room. So this is pretty similar to that. And as you could, if you're taking a really good look at this image here, his home is pretty much constructed of the earth. Here are the talented people um, during a festival, which will be mentioned later in the presentation, I believe. And you can kind of see these gentlemen. They got their swords out, and they look festive. And if some have to go down, they look like they're ready to get down and stab them a couple of people too. They're in their garment, clothing, and so forth. You see, some people. One guy has on pants, which is eh, it's not traditional. It's not traditional at all. Um, these people, and you'll see later, are usually one who um, don't like tradition. Well, do not like the fashions of. I won't say do not like. I would say that their style of dress is sacred to them when they are in certain places versus others. This is a gold mine outside of what within the region, not outside, within the region. And as you can see, men and women working hard in these gold mines. And it's not uncommon to see a mother and child out mining together with her baby on her back, um, doing what she can do to try to find some of these resources that people use around the world today called gold. So, who is Tung-Nab? The Tallensi people's god is named Tung-Nab. Opinions differs as to whether Tung-Nab was a primordial ancestor who underwent apotheosis or an existing deity encountered by the first Talensi. According to Fortes, Tung-Nab was the primordial ancestor who was believed to manifest himself in the oracular voice. The present day Yipipendan or Gorongo or Wakabaza provided a similar interpretation. The original man, Teling, was called Tung-Nab. Who is Tung-Nab again? In contrast, an unnamed informant likely to have been Victor Abarrio told Rattray in 1928 that its power is from God Nayin, a statement echoed by Yaron Boy 70 years later. Tung-Nab is not our ancestor. Even though it is a Ba'er, it came from God. Now, when God created it, Tung-Nab made the people come here. When our ancestors migrated to this area, he made the people settle around here. Now, while I'm on this particular slide, I do want to say that Victor Aboya is a significant voice in the research that was done by Rattray. Victor Boyer was of the people. He was sold by his uncle in slavery for some food and to feed the family, and who would later be sold off to some other people who Christianized or converted him, Christianized him, made him a missionary, and then later his understanding and knowledge of the particular people during this research area became very useful for Rattray, which was part of the reason he was able to get primary information from these people and put forth his produced his journals and thus forth. So you have some important people like Rattray and Fortes who use the information of the people to actually construct their literature that is out today as primary evidence on who the Talensi people are, Tallensi people are, and their god called Tung-Nab. So what's Tung-Nab again? Tung-Nab is the ancestor deity of the Bo'ar cult. Tung-Nab also means Lord of the Earth or Chief of the Earth. This is a shrine. You may have seen this image on our like page or my Facebook page personally, but in front of it would have been offerings. As you can see, there's little metal plates where offerings are brought here and the sacrifices are made on this shrine. This whole place is an actual shrine, and it's significant to what's going on here. Now, I will tell you this if I do not mention it in the presentation, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it is they walk around this shrine dang near butt naked. It is not, they don't like to wear clothes around this area. This is a sacred space, and they frown upon wearing clothes around this area. There's something that they do wear in the area, so I'm not gonna say they just butt naked, but some people would be, some other people wouldn't be, and we'll move on. The history of Tung-Nab and his talented guardians before the colonial conquest of 1911 remains beyond the reach of detailed reconstruction. While the British documents and the oral testimonies of elderly informants provide enough evidence to piece together the opening phase of colonial encounter, the pre-colonial Tong Hills emerged only in the vacuous of outlines. The earliest written accounts date only to the end of the 19th century, with the arrival of the agents of European imperial expansion. With the exception of oral traditions of origin and migration recorded by colonial ethnographers in subsequent decades, there is an almost complete absence of historical sources for what had long been a remote frontier zone bisecting the regions of Mossi state building to the north and the south. Even when we move into the 20th century, recovering the historical trajectory of something as intangible and omnipresent as a God presents a whole raft of evidential and interpretive problems. Violently suppressed during the era of the British conquest, Tung-Nab's ritual network was reforged largely beyond the purview of the hostile colonial state. While the colonial archive has much to tell us about many aspects of African life, it is stubbornly recalcitrant concerning issues of religion and belief in general and dynamics of savannah deities like Tung-Nab in particular. Historical accounts of their part of the West African Sudanic zone, lying between the Akan Forest to the south and the Great Bend of the Niger River to the north, and have dominated by emergence of the so-called Mossi or Mossi the Gumba complex of kingdoms. In contrast to powerful agricultural and gold mining entrepreneurs who, from the 15th century, began to forge their Forest kingdoms, the Savannah state builders appear to have been alien intruders. Analysis of royal tradition suggests that Mossi immigrants had begun to enter the Baltic region from the northeast by the early 15th century. Whether they arrived as mounted warriors or acquired horses later is unclear, although cavalry technology was certain crucial to the consolidation of rule over the autonomous agriculturalists. Oral tradition suggests that the dynamics of conquest vary from region to region. In some cases, the process of state formation was marked by a violent conflict and displacement of earlier settlers. The more common pattern seems to have been one of the mutual accommodations between imported political power vested in the person of the circular ruler, Na or Namba, as in Nagwembe, and established ritual authority as retained by the indigenous earth priest, known in much of the southern Mossi region as the Tung-Naba, custodian of the land. This is at least the perspective from the political center, where a history of conflict followed the accommodations between the incoming ruling class and indigenous commoners is symbolically reenacted in the earlier Damba festival staged by the Mossi the Gamba kingdoms. The image that I showed you earlier was from this particular festival. The view from periphery is less easy to discern, as Wilkes concedes. The kingdoms themselves emerge only dimly from oral histories and Arabic chroniclers. Lacking specialized court historians of the type that produced the famous Dagomba drum histories and invariably reduced by Muslim chroniclers to a homogeneous mass of primitive pagans, the small-scale societies lying beyond the reach of a state authority are barely discernible in either. Neither has the linguistic history of the Middle Volta Basin been subjected to the sort of intensive analysis that has resulted in recent transformation of our view of the pre-colonial past of Bantu-speaking Equatorial Africa. It can simply be noted that in northern Ghana, there is no clear distinction between the languages spoken by the Mossi state builders, okay, on the one hand, and on the non-centralized peoples on the other hand. All speak languages of the so-called Gur family, specifically of the Gurusi and the Otivolta branches. Thus, within the western cluster of Otivolta, the language of the Talensi, Talen, or Talni is extremely close to that of both the Mapusu, Mapuli, and the Dagomba, Dagbani, while the tongues of two other non-centralized peoples, Nankani and the Dagara, are equally close to that of the northern Mossi or Burkina Faso. More, as in Equatorial Africa, the linguistic evidence can be interpreted in different ways, but the most likely scenario is that incoming warrior groups established military and political dominance, but adopted the languages and other cultural religious elements of the existing populations. The Talensi were among the non-centralized societies that cut across the zone of the Mossi state formation to the north and the south, but their country lay only some 20 miles beyond the center of Mapusi royal power. As Rattray and Fortes discovered, the Talensi society was characterized by a fundamental split between the immigrant Namu and the indigenous Tao. The Namu, a term cognated with the Mossi, comprised clans who traced their origins to the Mapungu kingdom across the White Volta River and from whose ranks were drawn titulary chiefs such as the Tung-Naba. On the grounds of their status as the first comers, the Tale clans provided the Tengdanas, who retained ritual custody of the land. The sacred epic center of the Tallensi world and the Tung Hills were inhabited mainly by indigenous Tale, Fortes Hills Talis, whose ritual functionaries coordinated the cycle of great festivals and managed the earth shrines and ancestor shrines. They also controlled access to the ancestor deity, Tung-Naba, whose fame as an oracle extended beyond the Tale land and deep into the zones of Mossi state builders. In his defining statement on the nature of stateless societies in West Africa, Horton identified the Voltic savannas as the locus classicus of such uh, disjunctive migration into the frontier zone. If I am losing you, okay, when it comes to state-less societies and state societies, in the presentation I did on Welcome to West Africa, I go over that in specifics to let you know how state societies and stateless societies are defined. Check that out. It's only an hour and a half. One result was the emergence of societies divided between landowners and latecomers whose solidarity was defined in terms of territory rather than genealogy. Another was tendency for ideas about the spiritual force of the earth to come to the forefront of social organizations, giving rise to powerful shrines, such as those dedicated to Tung-Nab, around which group relations turn. Attempts to define its exact boundaries and constituent tribal identities would be hotly debated amongst earlier colonial administrators and ethnographers on both sides of the Anglo-French imperial frontier. Unfortunately, sources contain few details of the magnitude of slaving in the different areas of the broad ethnic constellation before the very end of the 19th century. Yet there can be no doubt that the pre-colonial Talensi society in general and the ritual power of the Tong Hills in particular were shaped by the deepening involvement of the region in the Ashanti imperial system. Moreover, the identification by outsiders of the Talensi as primitive Guernsey would have a profound impact on the role of the Tung-Nab in the 20th century ritual commenced between the savannah and the forest. Ashanti perceptions of the northern savannah or Sarum from the Twi-Sirmi grasslands, Kwame the forest, were characterized by a wide variation in the degree of civilization according to its inhabitants. The outsiders, but like other non-Akan people, such as the coastal Ga, they possessed recognizable political hierarchies, and by the mid 18th century, were tied to the empire by formal treaty arrangements. From these and other more distant savannah polities came Muslim traders, scholars, and diviners who were given special leave to settle in Kumasi and who provided crucial services to the golden stool. If you are unfamiliar with the golden stool is solidarity. It's a piece of unity. It is a stool that united the empire and changed the game when there was turmoil or confusion amongst its people, the Ashanti people. The golden stool is a significant piece. You will always see the chief of the lineage of the tribe of the clan. You would always see in these festivals the golden stool within reach of him, either behind his head or at his or in front of him. Some have multiple stools, but when you see this, this is the most solidarity piece that you can see. In contrast, the non-centralized peoples were regarded as uncivilized barbarians who were fit only to be exploited as slaves. In Ashanti and other Akan states, they were called Nanokufu or Andunku, a term probably of Mandi derivation that suggested an identity outside of jural corporateness and indeed of the fringe of perceptions of humanity. And the Ashantian Kwaku Dua famously explained to the Methodist missionary T.B. Freeman in 1841. Listen closely. The small tribes in the interior fight with each other, take prisoners and sell them for slaves. As I know nothing about them, I allow my people to buy them as they please. They are of no use for anything but slaves. They are stupid, a little better than beasts. Kwakudua's view may be extreme. He stood, after all, at the apex of an urban ruling elite whose social distance from the Nanakufu population was far greater than that of the average Ashanti subject. Yet it is clear that the Gurusi and the Nanakufu stood on the very lowest rung of the Akan scale of civilization, and that their numbers were growing rapidly in the mid 19th century. But these factors help to explain the increasing allure that northern anti-witchcraft gods such as Tung-Nab held for the peoples of the forest and the coast by early colonial period. Nanakufu may have been seen as little better than beasts, but as denizens of the world of nature rather than the world of culture, they were also perceived to have intimate access to an array of potent ritual powers out there beyond the reach of civilized Akan society. Tallensi traditions of origin and migrations are therefore of considerable importance. But these, as recorded in the earlier colonial period, are sketchy at best, as well as being fraught with interpretive difficulties. Fortes rejected the historicity of oral traditions altogether, maintaining a strictly functionalist line that there were nothing more than formalizations of the temporary scheme of political and ceremonial relationships. This seems more overstated. Accounts of lineage and clan origins recorded by Rattray in 1928 do contain fragments of historical memory that link the settlement of the Tong Hills and the construction of a distinct Tallensi identity to the broader dynamics of slave trade. There are indications, moreover, that these processes continued well into the 19th century, to the time of the escalation of the Tung-Naba and the Samburimi slave raiding from the 1860s to the 1890s. Rattray's informant in Waukee, the settlement of the northern flank of the Tong Hills, said that his ancestors were Gurunsi from around Narungo, who were driven away by the Kanbosi. Kambonse, translated here as fighters. We like now to be called Talensi, not Gurunsi. We were used to speak the Gurn, now we talk Talene. Evidence of ongoing linguistic change in the neighboring Tallensi community of the Gorongo further suggests 19th century population movements. Our ancestors came from Tachama, Shiana, in the Cassini or Ulisi region. From there, they went to Po. We no longer talk Yule except the old people. We talk Talene. District Commissioner Nash also noted the impact of slave raiding on the settlement patterns following an interview with Tallensi elders on the subject in 1913. Nash's impressions from the conversation was that the Tong Hills seemed to have been left in comparative peace for generations and had as an assault long attracted Cassina, Bolsa, and the Gorasini people were from the west seeking sanctuary from the threat of mounted slavers. So in a gist, we can see right now, and everything that I probably confused you with is that we have people from different parts of this particular area that are now all speaking the same language and are conducting themselves as a one people because they are all on the run from slave raiding. And they ended up formulating their own systems of understandings and communications and so forth. So I mentioned a lot of things earlier in the presentation, and now I want to show you a map. I know I kind of confused a lot of people, but the Atlantic Ocean is at the very bottom. This is Ghana, okay? This is Ghana, and this is the Ashanti land. As you can see, the Ashanti land. The most significant piece that you see in front of you is the River Volta. The River Volta runs into the Atlantic. When the Portuguese came into Ghana, when they came into West Africa, because you see next door to Ghana is the Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, and then to the left you see Togo and Benin, and above that you see Mali, and above that you see Burkina Faso or the Mossi land, you know, and so on and so forth. We see this is an intricate piece in the puzzle. The Volta allowed them to raft their way on upstream to the white Volta, to the red Volta, to the black Volta. Okay? So when I was speaking and all of these, saying all of this stuff that was going over your head, I just was I kind of got to this point, particularly here, that I wanted to paint a picture or an image in you on how people come up into Ghana and they get up into these other regions and areas by this river here. So when I was speaking of the Ashanti, you see them in the lower sector, okay? The Ashanti was going north toward Burkina Faso, right? So when these raids and all of these things was taking place near all of these waters or whatever, people were flowing northward toward the land of the Mossi. Okay, so then you have them on the southern border, the Mossi on the southern border, and then some of them integrating themselves in the Mossi territory. That's how you get all of these one people over in these regions. So you have the upper Volta, you got the black Volta, the red Volta, you got the white Volta. So from now on, when you hear me start talking about this, hopefully this image will paint that picture for you. Okay, here's another image. All right. Okay, a better picture of the Volta. Everyone should know that the Volta is where you see all this water at, and then you see the offsets of the Volta because it's going in different places. You got the white going in one, the black going in another, the red going in another. This is how they get these smaller boats on up on through there, right? Civilizations are hanging out near these waters so they can fish, so they can get water for the everybody. It's a lot going on. The significance of the Volta is also significant of trade, which is also significant of slave raiding. These things are interconnected. Okay, the Volta is significant in trade. It is significant in slave raiding. Okay, these rivers take you all over where you need to go to get up to the interior. All right, so again, you see the Ashanti land. Ahead of that, you see the northern part or the upper Volta regions. I'm just trying to tie everything that I said earlier into perspective so you can understand. Where you see upper Volta, that's pretty much like Mossi area, Burkina Faso. Present-day informers recall tales of the danger their parents faced in moving about the countryside due to the constant threat of kidnapping and sale to passing slave caravans. People were afraid to move from house to house, explained the late Ba'an of Sepet, one of the communities of the western flank of the Tong Hills. You may have to be well armed with bows and arrows and cutlasses in case you met people stealing human beings. Personal security was further endangered during the periods of severe food shortage, when poor households resorted to the selective pawning of even outright sale of kin in order to fend off collapse in the mid 1890s. Prolonged drought certainly exacerbated by the escalating insecurity of the period, resulted in most devastating famine in Tallensi historical memory. Many died of starvation and disease, and so many children were pawned or sold that 15 years later, colonial courts were still dealing with disputes over the ownership of those exchanged locally for food. Let me pause right here. Ekpe, if you're in the chat, brother, when someone said that we sold ourselves into slavery, they did not have all the evidence. In this slide, in particular, this speaks to why this happened. If you're listening, brother Ekpe, because I know that you're going to come back and watch it if you're not watching it right now. I told you that I would answer this question for you in this presentation. This is evident. When when colonial rule came into these regions during the slave raiding and so forth, their military strategy forced a drought. No water, no food. None of the resources we had before to continue life as we know. They put people in situations where they would have to sell their kin in order to grow crop and to continue harvest. If they did neither of the two, starvation, disease, death. So when we have people in the community and on the internet that say you sold us into slavery and they don't give you the whole picture, then they are being disingenuous. This information can be very vital to a few people that I can think of right now that are having a conversation about this whole topic that I choose to not discuss for this presentation. But when you title your presentations online that if you sold me into slavery, whatever it ends with, then you need to be more specific historically, because this account will put that into perspective. It is stated here again that many people sold their loved ones in order to eat or to fend off collapse. This is the reality. If you know anything about the art of war, the first thing they do when they learn of who you are is they cut off your supplies, your natural, they cut you off from your natural resources. So, yes, some of us were sold into slavery or traded because a lot of people came back to get them. And next thing you know, they across the water, they somewhere else. The dude that I mentioned earlier was sold twice. Aboya, the missionary, they came back. You heard me earlier mention that people were still arguing 15 years later over who owned who because they had no idea, because people were traded for food. Let me move on. At that time, people were eating grass and they were dying. The only solution they could find was to sell some of their children in order to cater for others. There was a slave trade at the time. Then they had to sell some of their children to the people who in turn would send them across the white Volta. They would tie them under a tree and the children would stand there, and those who buy the slaves would come and look at them and get the ones they preferred and then buy them and send them far away to sell. If you wanted food and didn't have money, you would bring your children out. The sale of kin was a traumatic experience for all concerned. Ritually, it was seen as defying the land, which in turn needed to be purified by a series of rites and sacrifices. One unfortunate child thus sold was Victor Aboye, which I mentioned earlier, Rattray's research assistant and collaborator, who was born in Wakongo, 5 miles to the west of Tung Hills on the frontier between the Talensi and the Nanakani countrysides. During the 1890s, Famine Aboya had been exchanged by his uncle for a few baskets of grain, which were to help in keeping the remainder of his family from actual starvation. Sold down to the Ashanti, he was later freed and educated by Basil missionaries in Kumasi before returning home to play a key role in the colonial discovery of Tung-Naba. Let that sink in. If the rocky heights of the Tung Hill served as a fortress against the predations of state builders and slave raiders, they were also a hallowed ritual sanctuary, a repository of the most potent sacred power. In the absence of pre-colonial sources, the temptation is to portray this power as a part of the timeless terrain of mysterious holy places. This is certainly how British officials tended to view the ritual landscape of the northern frontier. The fetish shrine in the Tung Hills ran a typically early report has been in existence from the time immemorial. The earliest detailed account of the Tongnaab shrine, Tallensi, was written in 1913 by Captain S.D. Nash, the first district commissioner of the Zarangu district. For this time, Nash was an articulate and thoughtful observer of the local African society. In a diary entry that could have come from the pages of Sir James Frazer's The Golden Bar, Nash makes sense of indigenous religious belief and practice by locating the abade of the Tongzugu fetish, probably the particular Tung-Nab Bo'ar, which is shrine, called Bonab in the context of classical antiquity. This is a shrine. Don't look like one to you, but on the other side of it, it's a shrine. These are the boulders up on Tung Hill where people will travel to go up that hill and to perform rituals and so forth. A pen of a Virgil would be required to describe it. So nearly does it assimilate to the grotesque he describes, and in which the Sibyl utters her injunctions as awful mysterious oracles. A grove of nice-shaped trees surrounds the Tanzangu shrine. A stream of clear water flows through the suddenly disappears under two immense rocks. Between these rocks, there is a hole, hardly large enough to admit a man, which seems to communicate with the stream far below. On the rocks, there are beads, cloth cowries, some hair shaved from men's heads, left by consultants of the oracle. Childless women were particularly prone to visit this place, and prospective mothers would also come to hear their fate and to bring good luck on their offspring. It was taboo for anyone to wear clothes on entering the hills. Skins, however, might be worn. The fetish man Epsi Dixie, dogmatic assertion of a statement, was regarded as a king of Nordstrom to cure every ill of mind and body. He can bring rain and he can stop it. The crops will not be good unless he is consulted. Mothers to be Mothers to be and childless women were especially faithful to him. Such beliefs would seem childish. Here, Nash means childlike, where it not effect that exactly the same idea and carried out of the home when a cardinal leads 3 or 4 thousand pilgrims to the sacred grotto of the Lourdes. Our ancestors, our grandfathers, our fathers all met Tung-Nab here. We were told by the late Yeren Bore, who until his death in 2002 was the ultimate custodian of the Tung-Nab Boar called Yani. He was here before we came. We don't know where he came from. He is just there. This is also an implication of Mayor Fortes' anthropolitical vision of Tallensi society in the 1930s, bound together by an intricate, unchanging scheme of ritual collaboration focused on the rights of the dual earth and the ancestor cults. There's no doubt that the shrine atop the Tong Hills are indeed very old. On the British official note in 1925 that the granite boulders around Yeni Boar were worn away, polished glass, smooth evidence of Tung-Nab's considerable age and popularity, and the erosion can still be seen today. The problem with all this, however, is that it reinforces the established image of African traditional religion as existing outside of history. The origins of Tung-Nab will, of course, always be shrouded in obscurity. But just as the evolution of the Talensi society as a whole must be located in a broader pre-colonial history shaped by the slave-raiding economy of the Ashanti hinterlands, so too must be the evolution of Talensi religious belief and practice, in particular the elaborate pilgrim network linking the Tong Hills with their own ritual hinterland. Indeed, it is likely that two main historical functions of the hills reinforced each other, with their status as a physical sanctuary in an insecure world lending way to their ritual power and vice versa. This connection emerges in what Goody describes as the opposition of the horse and the earth. That is, well-documented prohibition throughout the Voltic Savannah region on horses entering the precincts of the earth and their ancestor shrines. There is every indication that the imposing edifice of the Tong Hills dominated the sacred landscape of the region long before the coming of British rule. Rising steeply to the height of over 600 feet from the surrounding plain and with the great stacks of pink granite boulders piled one on top of the other as if by some mighty supernatural hand, the Tong Hills stood out in a landscape where any striking feature tended to be invested with cosmological significance. Quite simply, the complex mechanisms linking clients from surrounding regions to the Tung-Nab's far-flung ritual field was confirmed by Mayor Fortes in the 1930s. Despite his emphasis on the bounded unity of Tallensi society, he readily acknowledged the importance of the ancestor shrines and what he called the external relations of its constituent clans and lineages. This aspect of the cult is by no means a mere sideline, he wrote. It is an intrinsic and obviously old established feature of it. Fortes identified a basic distinction in the organization of Tallensi belief between the cult of the Earth Ting and the cult of the ancestor Boar. At the most fundamental level of understanding, the two sets of rites can be seen as encapsulating the myriad tensions and interactions between the world of nature on the one hand and the world of human nature on the other. The natives sum up the relationship between the Ba'ir and the Tin in the following formula. Fortes explained. The Ba'ir, they say, rest on the earth and cannot act without it. But the earth would be derelict without men. The children of the ancestor whose spiritual abode is the Ba'ir, the sacredness of the earth due to the fact that the men live on its surface, tend it, and worship it. The dual earth and ancestor cults were localized at a range of sacred spots that served principally as sites of sacrifice, Ka'ab. The term Ka'ab Fortes stress embraces every kind of ritual offering or libation and can be further glossed as worship of prayer. An earth shrine of Tungban or Tungbana, he observed, may be a grove of trees, a pool, a stream, a pile of boulders, a single tree, or merely a small patch in the midst of cultivated fields. Notice the shrines are everything around them, the earth, nature. Like Tongbana or earth shrines, Talensi ancestor shrines appeared in a variety of different manifestations from small household altars up to the famous sites of transcultural pilgrimage. Fortes placed great emphasis throughout his work on the absolute centrality of the ancestors of Talensi religious belief and practice. Their religion consists essentially of an elaborate system of ancestor worship. He reflected in a 1966 paper. It so dominates their thought that the other occult agencies postulated by them, the mystically powerful earth or the magically efficacious, I don't know how to say that word, medicines, for instance, are all conceived of as being under the ultimate control of the ancestors. It was the ancestors, Kapim, the dead, but usually referred to with the kinship terms Banem, fathers, or more commonly Yahnim, Yab, grandfathers, rather than God, who controlled plutonium human existence and toward whom Cobb sacrifice or prayer was directed. So to them, God was just what God is, but the ancestors to the Talensi and the people around were more deified to them in a sense because they had a direct contact with their ancestors. So they would build shrines and temples and things of that nature in reverence to the ancestors who held more of esteem value to them and who was basically the go-between. You see this all over the continent of Africa as the ancestors being the go-between. Fortes' famous essay. You can look this up. $64 if you want it. It is it's huge as far as pages. Religion, Morality, and the Person, Essays on the Tallensi Religion by Meyer Fortet. You can look that up. The generic talent term for all types of ancestor shrines is Ba'ir, as in much of the Gur cultural zones. Those devoted by an individual to his own or her own forebears typically take the form of conical clay structures ranging from about 1 to 6 feet in height, often kept with a broken pot and incorporating hoe blades, stones, and other ritually significant objects. Sometimes freestanding and sometimes built seamlessly into the polished outer walls, rooms or grain stores of compounds, they remain an ambiguous feature of Tallensi vernacular architecture to the present day. Within the broad designation of a ba'a was that the bo'er, or shrine, specifically dedicated by or the founding ancestors of the lineage clan. One well-known bo'ar was the associated with Musur, the demiurgic feature reverenced by the Namu as the first migrant from Maprungu and the founder of Tongo. Fortes identified a third and even more specialized type of Ba'ir that was particularly associated with the autonomous hill talents rather than the immigrant Namu. It was described as Yinga Bo'a, but throughout his published work, Fortes used the translation external Ba'ir or Bagar, capitalized to distinguish it from ordinary Ba'ar. It is unclear exactly why Fortes chose this construction, especially as he notes in passing that the term actually used by the Tallensi for these shrines was Tongnaab. The Yinga or Tung-Naba Boar served as a common shrine for all the ancestors of the autonomous Talay clans. It was external, Fortes argued, in two senses. First, it was physically located out in the open, as opposed to within a compound like the Gangi Boar or the Boar of the room. An external barrier, he noted, may be a grove of trees, a cave in the hillside, or a small enclosure made by trees and boulders. It is truly sacred, for it may be entered only for ritual purposes and in the company of all ritual officiates. Second, it was outside in the social sense of not being associated with any one particular lineage. Fortes could have added a third sense that Tongnab was also external and that it acted as a focus of devotion and pilgrimage for a diverse range of peoples from outside of Tallensi society. Opinion differs as to whether Tung-Nab was a primordial ancestor who underwent apotheosis or an existing deity encountered by the first Tallensi. According to Fortes, Tung-Nab was the primordial ancestor who was believed to manifest himself in the oracular voice. The present-day Yapinga or Garunga Wakimbi provided a similar interpretation. The original man, Taling, was called Tung-Nab, made by the people to come here. I'm reiterating this for I have a point here. When our ancestors migrated to this area, he made the people settle around here. And this is why. The implication is that the spiritual power called Tung-Nab was embedded in the rocky heights of the Tong Hills before the emergence of mankind and before the land was converted from the Mu'o to Ting. Either way, it is clear that Tung-Nab, like the ancestors, is generally perceived as a readily accessible refraction of the withdrawn Haga Nawum. Not all Tung-Naba were located amidst the granite boulders atop the heights of the Tong Hills. Down on the flat in the Tongo were examples of the ritual life of the Zaboon clan, which focused on the Dunkpaling or Boa, a sacred grove whose mystical powers are renowned and respected far beyond the borders of Talaland. But it was among the hill folk that this aspect of the ancestor cult was most fully elaborated. Fortes estimated in the 1930s that Tong Hills contained about a dozen Tung-Naba. Each site was managed by a group of what he called ritual collaborators, that is, a particular combination of autonomous lineage and clans. The ritual functionaries were direct responsibilities for the shrines were male elders who held either a Tangdana ship or a more specialist office such as Yepindam, the custodian of the lineage ancestors, or Boarana, the custodian of the Boar or shrine. Historically, all of the shrines shared an ideological capacity to incorporate constituencies from beyond the frontiers of Tallensi settlements. At various times in the distant past, one or the other may well have risen to a position of prominence in the regional ritual landscape. By the early 20th century, two Tung-Nab shrines in particular emerged from the sources as forming the main focus of the external pilgrim trade. The fame of the Dukapale notwithstanding, these were Banab and Yani, both on which located at the top of the hills and the ritual strongholds of Tazang. Banab means literally chief of things, a name glossed by Fortes as great benefactor. The etymology of Yani, or according to Fortes, Wani, is less clear, although there are indications that the name is another in the range of cognates associated with Yin and Nayin and Nawun. Yet, early documentary sources, together with the testimonies of present-day informers, suggest that the hilltop shrines had long attracted supplicants not only from contiguous, non-centralized people, the Kusi to the east, and the various Gurunsi groups, such as the Nanakini, Busa, and the Kasina to the west, but also from the zones of the state formation beyond. Mossi to the north, Maprungu, Dabong, and the Nanumba to the south, and the unidentified people from the north of what became German Togoland. These various groups, ethnically designated strangers, tended to be associated with particular Tung-Nab shrines. Ideological flexibility and physical mobility were the two characteristics that facilitated the spread of Tung-Nab. In contrast with Tungbana, which were rooted in particular sacred locations, the power of the Boar could be moved with ease from place to place. One vessel of this power was the Boar Tiyi, a portable shrine in the form of a larger leather bag stuffed with sacred earth and other ritual elements. As Fortes noted, the Boar T draws the ancestors themselves along the scene of a ritual. Another common vessel was an animal horn, again containing lumps of red lateric clay referred to as Tung-Nab Ting, Tung-Nab Earth, taken from an established shrine. The process of investing ritual power in soil was touched on by one of Tallensi in 1928 as he attempted to explain Rattray the essential difference between the Ba'ar and the more significant Bo'ar. A Bulgara or Bo'ar you fetch from your mother's country after she is dead. Listen to this. You go to your mother's father's compound and take some of the earth from the bagere, ba'ar of your mother's father, and put this in a calabash, which your wife will carry home. This soil will be put in a horn and is called my mother's bogere. A bogere is like a shade to a bagere. The key concept here is the shade or the shadow of an existing source or ritual power, and Talin, the Yahi, or as rendered by Fortes, Yalink. Now, your mother transitions. You and your wife go back to where your mother is from, her father's land, that compound. Get some dirt from where she lived, in that compound. You would pack it in a calabash or a sack. You would bring it back, pack it into what they would perceive a horn. Okay, this is giving something power or deifying it or consecrating it, as Ben would say, as part of your shrine, right? So when you go to this particular boar, you know, it will be considered a portable shrine from that lineage. I hope I explained that right. Correct me if I'm wrong. In Tallensi terminology, Tung-Naba became their Sair or spiritual guardian. Tung-Nab Beak were required to keep the totemic avoidance of their particular shrine community and to make pilgrims to Tingzong up to 3 times each year during the run-up to the great Bo'arim harvest festival in order to renew their allegiance to the god and to secure prophetic advice on the coming year. In return, ritual intermediaries from the hills and in Bolsalan, this usually meant representatives of the Shia Borana, would make one journey out of those who possessed the Yahid to ensure that all was correct. As Fortes observed in 1930, these visitors coming as emissaries of the Bahir are received with hospitality due to the honored kinsmen and travel long distance in hostile country under the safe conduct of their client associates without danger. Thus, the bond linking the Tong Hills to their widely scattered ritual constituencies would be secure for another season. The entire unit of food economy thus draws its main supply of grain, the staple food stuff from a common source, but every household, every primary family, and indeed every individual other than young children has a degree of economic independence, which is limited only by the obligations to the bigger unit. And in this industrious householder usually possesses some poultry and perhaps sheep and goats of his own, supplies a good deal of the minor crops consumed by his own wives and children, and even some grain to augment his wives, rations from the main store. Every woman, again, adds to the food supply of her primary family by her own efforts. If she is a market trader or potterist, for example, she will have money of her own, will sometimes purchase extra foodstuff, and may invest in livestock, which will eventually go to her sons. Her husband has no powers of disposal over her property. If he uses any of it by her permission, it is a debt which must be paid. Talensi traditions. The Talensi have one of the most consistent patrilineal patriarchal family systems as yet observed in Africa. By the rule of lineage, exonomy, daughters marry out men, are born, grow up, and live their lives in the same place and often homestead. In Talensi traditional marriages, the bridegroom's guardian must send the placation gift, the Sudan, to the bride's guardian and must pay a proportion of the bride price acceptable to the latter. A wife is usually espoused sold by paving the bride price, a forehead, a cattle, or the equivalent installments over a number of years. If he does not fulfill these drural requirements, a man has no rights to and over his wife. There is hardly a divorce case in Talensi society. However, a marriage sometimes break up when a woman commits adultery. The birth of a firstborn son, I know women, I know y'all gonna say that's crazy. What about the men? The birth of a firstborn son or firstborn daughter makes a man truly mature and fulfilled. and it represents his ascendance to the highest position in the society. Throughout life, they keep in close touch with their own parental kinsfolk. Indeed, as among other African patrilineal peoples, the brother plays an important part in the life and the indulgent, protective, non-authoritarian counterpose to the father and paternal kin. Wife with children is entitled to have her own apartment, which is the private domain of herself and her children. Whew. These are dance patterns. So when you see the Galib Festival, let's just take a look. Dance patterns in the Galib Festival. The top 1 through 3 is recorded by Myra Fortes in his journal. Unspecified locations, bottom locations is stated. So when they are having these festivals, you will see these 3 dance patterns: the wiggle lines, the wiggle wiggle comeback, the wiggle wiggle come back. Okay, those are the dance lines of the rituals. Now, when you are on the hill where this festival could be taking place, if you look to the bigger square, you see the dance. They go in a circle, and then they do the wiggle wiggle, right? And then they exit the Nayu shrine. Okay, there's dances to the Nayu shrine. Now, when they approach the Tongzu dances, which is the main body of dancers, it's all circle, small, and then it gets bigger, and they just rotate, or they near the rocks, and then in Nayu, you see they have it going like that. So they actually have patterns for how they dance during rituals in particular areas on the hill. I thought that was pretty unique. The seating plans in Nayu, okay, recorded by Fortes. Fortes' unpublished data have indicated how, although aspects of ritual have altered, as in the wrestling of the Nara and the importance of Nayu, its place in the Golib festival and the associated dances and material culture have remained largely unchanged over 70 years. The twin themes of traditions and change can be seen to the intertwine of the Tallensi ritual and religion. You can pause the video and you can look at this, or you can wait for the sources if you want to go back and you want to get into the journal of Fortes. But these are the seating plans, okay? It's very unique. You can find number 1, and then you can see number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on, okay? At each place, they're different among the hill and for different instances. All right, Tallensi women in sorghum farming. All right, these are some an elder woman and mid-aged woman out farming a crop. Now, earlier in the presentation, I told you that there was a time where the slave raiding had occurred and the Talensi people were cut off from being able to farm. And this is one of the areas that had dried out and they were unable to tend to the field and grow their crops. Therefore, many of them starved and died. This is a fetish priest at Tazong. And as you can see, he is not in clothes. He is in traditional garb. And that is how they rock on the hill. Yep, he is inside the shrine. This is a portrait traditional priest in the cave that was mentioned earlier. The sacrifices of Ting Zug. Okay, as you can see, these big old boulders. Right, he got a big old smile on his face. Now this is a shrine where he is. Notice no clothes. He has on animal skin. That is how they rock up there. There's a story, man, about a gentleman who was a priest, and this true story, by the way. And he feared wearing clothes on the hill. And the British, when they came in to colonize the hill, they forced him to wear clothes on the hill. Nothing happened to him, and he was shocked by it, but he was scared out of his mind. And he did not want to go on the hill dressing those clothes. Well, they had forbidden them to stopped dressing how they're dressing now because they were colonizing the area and they were building a road through the, well, not through the hill but nearby the hill, and they forced these people to create this road for them for free. And I may get into that a little bit more, elaborate on that in a part two or something like that, but it's pathetic. It's pathetic. Um, Here we have grinding hollows at Sandoria. Okay, Fortes provided minimum data on Smiths or their practices in his published work, but this is compensated for his notebooks. What is evident is that the smelting was then also unknown amongst the Tallensi, and smithing was, as today, the established practice. Fortes interviewed the most accomplished smith in Sakpi, called Pabil, who had been given the title Sanab, chief of blacksmiths. This blacksmith's forge and anvil in Sakpe section of Tengzong in November. Excavation in one of the earth shrines, the Nau shrine, recovered an extensive assemblage of iron artifacts, including the bracelets and points associated with the standing stones. These total 8 complete bracelets, 7 bracelet fragments, 1 iron finger ring, 5 iron points, and 2 fragments of the iron strip. So as you can see, he's in the shrine and he has no clothes on. All he has is the traditional garb, which would later be restored after the British did what they did after colonial rule and whatever. Traditions would be restored. But during colonial rule, they broke these people down. They fired on the hill twice in 1911 and I think 1915, if I'm not mistaken. The British waged the war on the Talensi people. All they had was bow and arrows. All they had was knives and some swords. They had no guns. The British fired on them trying to destroy the shrines. And they didn't understand they didn't understand these people at all originally. And they tried to break them and change the way they lived and everything. And they forbidden people for going up on a hill and practicing in the shrines. They did it for a while. Standing stones in the Nau shrine. Conversely, Fortes data indicated that the standing stones, even in the 1930s, were precisely configured within ritual action in a way that they are not today. For he describes how an upright, slender stone about 3 feet high that stood in the ground at the edge of the Nau was used as an arena for the dramatic wrestling of the Nara millet. Yeah, you heard me correctly, wrestling. Defied and talented medical practices. This comes out of a scientific journal and was significant enough for me to put into the presentation. Of course, I had to share the source with my brothers first before putting it into the presentation, but going an extra mile and just trying to help people understand that the Tallensi had a great understanding of medicine and stuff. So Fortes in 1949 refers to almost everyone owning roots for some sicknesses, in which he says the important lies not so much in their physical properties as in the fact that their owner is able by right of ownership to mobilize magical virtue in their support. Potentially, this is a simplification in overemphasizing the magical properties of Tallensi medicinal practice, but he is correct in identifying the widespread of patterns of medicinal knowledge that exist. This differs considerably from the southern Ghana, where medicine specialists commonly cure many more than 1 or 2 ailments, and according to the projected of ethnobotanists, they lack the wider knowledge found in the south of Ghana about the healing properties of plants. All right. Now, instead, the Tong heals, the majority of the healers, a term preferably the Fortes doctors, know only about 1 or 2 medicines. Of the 28 people interviewed, 19 knew 1 medicine, 5 knew 2, 2 knew 3, and 2 knew 4. Both the latter were prominent individuals, one earth priest and the other one was the chief of Tingzong. Here's a medicine shrine. So when you look on the hill, if you've seen in the other pictures that I posted, You see something that look like these four figures here, those are medicine shrines. The range of substance utilized in Talensi medicines and varied encompassing mineral plants and animal parts and products. In a total, 33 plant-based medicines and 10 medicines predominantly made from other substances were identified. Of these, 5 of the plant-based and 2 of the other medicines were directly linked with shrines through sources of medicine shrine construction as a part of the healing process or shrine propitiation. Plants. 11 medicinal plants were utilized individually. 21 were mixed with other plant species, and in one instance, the number of species constituting the medicine is unknown. In 10 instances, 2 species were mixed. In 6 instances, 3 species. In 4 instances, 4 species. And in 1 instance, 5 species. In 10 instances, medicine plants, either singularly or a combination, were used with non-plant-based substances to create medicines, but these were still defined as plant-based medicines by the healers themselves. Trees, bushes, herbs, and grasses, and wild, semi-cultivated, and cultivated plants were all represented in the medicinal botanical species recorded. The environments exploited were also varied, including those immediate to the healer's compound or far out in the bush. Diversity in the plant parts utilized was also evident. These could include the whole plant, the juice, stem, barks, leaves, seeds, grains, and roots. Fortes notes that the Italian term for root, nae, is often utilized as a generic term for any vegetable products used in tale, leechcraft, and medicine, and this is an observation supported by recent data. Non-plant medicines. The second group of 10 medicines is those made from non-plant-based substances. The substances and objects utilized are various minerals, predominant in 7 instances, with burnt bone used in 1 medicine, and combination of substances and or objects of 2 medicines. All the non-plant medicines substances can still be obtained except the buffalo rib used in 1 of the plant-based medicines, as the animal has been hunted to the extinction, and thus the source of supply has ended. In 1 instance, there was a discrepancy between the ingredients of medicine described and their subsequent identification. Specifically, these were stated to be a rabbit and bird bone, but faunal analysis indicated they were from the hare or rabbit metabodo, or however you say that, and hare proximal femur. Clay and slag and iron powder were equally represented as the constituents of 3 medicines each. Termite clay, one of the types of clay used, is widely found, but clay also forms in primary medicinal substances obtained from shrines. This is collected from natural deposits close to various earth shrines, as for example, at Tung-Naba, Yani, and at Tongnaab. In both instances, its collections was ascribed human agency, even if its provenance was described as divine, and the evidence in the name given to the clay at both Tung-Nab, Yani, and Tongnaab. Stone grinder pounders incorporated in the medicine shrine entrance to the Tongnaab shrine. This is the image to the right. Yeah, it looked like somebody about to get sacrificed. Yeah, buddy. Tingzong Shrine. I want y'all to take a good look at this earth shrine. This is a shrine. Remember, you can't enter the shrine with the clothes on. You got to have your animal skin on. Cover your private part. Come on in there. Let's get to work.
Hello, wonderful viewers. This Big Vision coming to you from Big Vision Media. I am over here in Ghana, West Africa, the land of my birth. This place, as you see right now, is the palace of the Tenzuk chief. Right behind me is part of the house. The chief has about 23 wives with 115 children. And the entirety of the house houses over 300 people. As you see me right now, I am on top of the rooms within the compound. I will be talking to one of the chief's son, and he will be telling me a whole lot about this palace. At the entrance of his palace, one is greeted with a god, as you see before me, and one of his sons will be telling me a little bit about this god. So what is the name of this god right here?
The name is called Te.
So what does it do?
And the other one also is Dok.
So this is called Te, and the other one is Dok. So do you know what they do?
Yes. This one is mainly to protect evil things against the family.
So this god right here, a protective shield against the family in terms of any demonic attack. Okay. What is this shrine? What's the name of this shrine?
This is the founder of the house.
The founder of the house.
That's his personal shrine.
And what is the name of the founder of the house?
Golan Tengol.
So Golan Tengol is the founder of this household. So that means he built this house. I am walking into the royal household of the Tenzuk chief. We've just walked in. So now where do we go? Do we go left or right? We pass left, right? I am in here at one of the sections within this big royal household, and I am about to get into one of the rooms within this royal household. You might want to come with me for us to have a feel as to how it looks like. All right, come with me. Wow. It looks cool in here. This part of the world is quite hot because it's closer to the Sahara Desert. But I tell you, anybody living in this place would not want to come out because this in here is very cold. This is Africa, and you cannot find this in any other place of the world except in Africa. This is an idol to my left, and to my right is another idol. So that means anybody living in this room is protected by two powerful idols. This room, I am told, is about 500 to 600 years old. It was built by the founder of this royal household, and it is right here in the center of the royal household. I am still taking the tour around Tenzuk, and you might want to come with me. I am on my way to the Tenzuk shrine. The Tenzuk shrine is a very famous shrine in Ghana. There we are right here, and I am on my way to the shrine. This right here you see me is the part of the shrine, and looking into this shrine you see the skulls of donkeys, and I'm told it is a donkey cave. My tour guide will be telling me more about it. Now tell me about this place. What is it? What is it for? So tell me about it.
Okay, this is a famous cave called Donkey Cave because a lot of people come to seek help from the shrine. Assuming you marry for so long, you are not able to produce. You are a farmer, you want good harvest. You are a businessman, you want customers to attend. Even pastors and Muslims, they do come here. Some of them normally find it difficult to go to Makkah. So they come to the shrine for consultation to help them to make gateway. So some of them normally make a promise that if I'm able to achieve what I want, I'll come and pay a donkey. But it doesn't mean any promise you should make there should be a donkey. Whatever you think you can come back to fulfill. So these are promise from people who make promise to donkey, and they make sacrifice to the shrine, and they kept the schools there.
How many donkeys do you have to come with?
This one is from your own heart of interest. What if you promise one donkey, you are bringing one donkey. If you promise two donkeys, you are bringing two donkeys.
Right behind me is where the spirits live, and the priest goes to consult the God or the shrine. People from all over Africa and beyond come to consult this shrine right here. It is called the Tenzuk Shrine. It is also a tourist destination. My viewers all over the United States of America and Europe watching me can come to Ghana, West Africa, to Tenzuk in Tongo to see for themselves what I am talking about. This is the handiwork of the good Lord himself. This you see right now above me is a 20-ton rock. And right here is the cave. Let me tell you a quick history about Tongo. Tongo is one of the last places to succumb or to be captured by the Europeans because they had this to their advantage. When anytime they sense the arrival of slave raiders or the Europeans, they would run into caves like this and hide themselves. From Ghana, West Africa, my name is Big Vision, coming to you from Big Vision Media.
Conclusion. Before, during, and after British arrival into the region, the Tallensi, long as they could remember, held true to their God that served them all. The earth has and always will be the centerpiece of existence for its people. The hills hold a special place among its people that meant to be, especially during trying times facing slave raids, colonization, and much more. The shrines are evidence of spiritual understanding and connection to their immediate ancestors, who they praise more than their God. These are my sources. You can pause the video, screenshot it. Reliable sources. Reliable. The UNESCO World Heritage Sites, Fortes' account, archaeology, medicinal, all of that, the journals, anthropology, they're all here.
What do you think your ancestors got these? They paid a fair price. Did they take it? Took everything else.
History is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is also a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells of people where they have been, what they have been, where they are, what they are.
Walk like a warrior. Walk like a warrior. Walk like a warrior. Walk like a warrior. I ain't talking about no hustler. I ain't talking about no gangster. I'm hollering at the soldier. Revolutionary culture. Bang on out.
Remember, Black Panther has a journal coming soon called Killmonger's Corner. It will feature some of the greatest minds in the community. Articles, artwork, a lot of things that will come out of this journal. There's a lot of things that I am and I'm ready to read about. Please support it. It is our first. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for everybody who will tune in later. Brother Kofi, do you have something you want to say? If you're still there, I think you probably made it home now. Kofi probably didn't fell off. Nope, he does. Might be unpacking. Well, if Kofi don't have nothing to say, man, again, Shimon Hotep go in peace. Thank everybody for tuning in. Started a little early today because I knew it was going to be long, and ended up being about an hour and a half. So I thank everybody who came in late, who just joined, who left, came back, whatever. Because I know there's some other conversations that are going on right now that draw a lot of interest. So appreciate the support. Look forward to more pop-ups from us in the future, attacking small bits and pieces of African, West African history and African history and culture in general. And hopefully we can kind of liberate through education, and everybody can build off this information. So appreciate y'all, man. Thanks everybody who devoted their time to actually spending time with me. You could be anywhere else. You could have been doing any other thing. You could have been arguing with other people in chat rooms and Facebook, you know, your family, whatever. So on that note, we out.